It's always nice to review something other than a smartphone, but I guess the comfort zone is still there somewhat because this laptop that I'm reviewing right now happens to have some pretty deep-rooted smartphone roots. Ultimately though, it is a wonderful, ultra-portable laptop in an age when travel and commuting are at an all-time low. So would this laptop make sense for you right now? Well, that's kind of the question we're about to ask. It's Joshua Vergara, what's going on everybody? And it's time to ask the question, who is the Samsung Galaxy Book Flex for? We're going to start off and say that this laptop is for people trying to stay nimble. I am going to spend a little bit of time talking about how slim and sleek this laptop is. Here, let me close it and you can just see what that profile looks like. So this is one of the most compact and ultra portable laptops I have ever used. And what really surprises me about this laptop is just how much has been packed into it given its diminutive size. But of course, as is evidenced by the name, the Galaxy Book Flex is able to turn into a number of different configurations. You have the classic laptop form, and then you can tent it up so that you have a media display, or just fold it all the way back and then you basically have a tablet. And the Windows 10 OS on here does have a tablet mode when you fold it all the way back, but that actually eliminates the usage of some of the apps that I prefer to have, so I tend to turn the tablet mode off. But there are plenty of ways beyond just the form factor and the OS that you can enjoy the Galaxy Book Flex. I'm actually going to just throw this detail out early on in the video. There's wireless power share in the touchpad. Talk about being nimble. If you're watching something on the screen, maybe reading something or watching something, and you're not really doing any inputs on there, you could just turn on wireless power share and have any of your other wireless charging capable devices sitting on there so you could top it up while you're doing anything else on the display. It's this level of thought that Samsung put into the laptop that is honestly pretty refreshing. And ultimately for the wireless power share, it's just a fun multitasking bonus. But first and foremost, this is a laptop, and you can see that I'm reading my script directly from the screen right here, and I wrote the whole thing using this laptop. So obviously, for the writers out there, this laptop might be a good fit. It is great to have laptops and desktops that can literally do it all, but sometimes you need something small and agile like this that specializes in key tasks. I can get up in the morning, hit up my Notion notebook, do some journaling, and then once I'm done with all of that, get into the script writing to jumpstart my creative process. And of course, I gotta have that cup of coffee or tea on the side. The keyboard is properly spaced for the most part. While the keystrokes are expectedly shallow because of the slim form factor, it's still a satisfying typing experience. This script in particular is actually like 1600 words, and it took about an hour. But yeah, it was a comfortable experience throughout. I didn't have any problems. There is just one thing that I kind of don't like. It's not that big of a deal, but if you look at the fingerprint reader on here, which I'm glad is available, it cuts the right shift button in half. Now for some people this might actually be annoying. I very seldomly miss the mark when I'm using that right shift button, but when I do, it does irritate me a little bit. But then we can talk about different types of writers, and that's when we pop out that S Pen. The S Pen is nestled in the corner and it's easy to take out, and it looks a lot like and actually feels exactly like the Note 10 S Pen. This just gives you more ways of interacting with the laptop. If you prefer to put the screen down and just use this thing like a tablet on a table, go for it. You'll have to write out all of your inputs, but the handwriting to text recognition is not that bad. You just have to be a little bit obvious about what your letters are. The S Pen is just a great convenience for those moments when you do need a more personal touch. Maybe a custom screenshot that you can then write on. Maybe you have a live message that you want to send someone in the form of a GIF. And of course, the obvious one is if you have contracts coming in, you can sign those contracts properly. But let's not forget that tools like this are just nice to have in general. Now, this is a precision stylus, everything you would expect from Samsung's storied S Pen. And honestly, you know, the touchscreen is really nice, but if you just don't want to have it smudged up with your fingerprints or anyone else's fingerprints, this is nice to have on hand. Or you could just get away from the laptop altogether and use the S Pen like a remote. For PowerPoint presentations, you won't have to buy an extra trigger in order to change your slides, and you don't even have to reach out for the spacebar. And speaking of which, if you are binge watching something and you're farther away from the laptop, at least you have a way to play pause, that way you don't have to get up out of your seat and walk all the way to the laptop like I know none of us want to in this quarantine era. But let's move even further away from all of that, away from the signatures, away from the gestures, and honestly away from the work, and use the S Pen on a little bit of art. I'm no artist and I'm terrible at drawing, but that's when pen-up comes in. There's something really meditative about just coloring in a pineapple. And sometimes you might get too into your head and try to make it different, and then the zen goes away. You know, until that point, you just pick a brush, pick a color, and get into it. Now we do have to talk about some of the users that this laptop will not be for, and that starts with the gamers. You get Intel Ice Lake, the 10th gen processor on here, coupled with Intel's Iris Plus graphics, and together that means that this laptop is capable of some great media consumption, but it's not going to be enough for most current games. You might be able to go kind of low on the settings for games like Overwatch, but I honestly didn't feel comfortable putting anything more intensive on here. What is a nice surprise is that on the side there are two Thunderbolt ports. That means eGPUs can be connected to this. Yes, it does cost you more money, but putting a dedicated external graphics card on here does open up the possibilities a little bit. But honestly, for the times we're in right now, streaming services like Steam Link and PS4 Remote Play are already enough to enjoy gaming on a laptop like this via your local Wi-Fi. Ultimately, gaming is possible on this laptop, but hardcore gamers have probably already looked past this work-forward convertible laptop and tablet before I even got this far in the video. So maybe I'm not going to be doing face cam for all the gaming that I'm not going to be doing on this laptop, and that's also okay because the 720p webcam on here is just decent at best. But in getting into the more creative side of things, the Galaxy Book Flex touts a nice experience with the S Pen for photo and illustration apps, but not too much else. Now, to be fair, if you wanted to get a specific screenshot and then start doodling on it and actually getting creative with stuff like that, this laptop is completely capable of it thanks to the S Pen. But while you could get some light video editing done in programs like DaVinci Resolve, I still think it's too much to say that this laptop can handle anything but the most basic cuts of video editing software. Now, don't get me wrong, you could probably get some light editing done in video applications like DaVinci Resolve, but ultimately with a 1080p workflow, you might still need to use proxies, and there are probably going to be some hangups, especially if you're used to better performance from other laptops. It's just not going to feel the same on here. And much like with my thoughts about gamers, it's totally possible to add something like a eGPU to eke out more performance, but it's still not going to be at the level of laptops that real creatives probably already have. So for the most part, I use this laptop for casual usage and casual editing. Outside of all the writing, I might go into Adobe Lightroom and edit some photos in there, especially for social media. But what's interesting here is that the SD card slot is actually a tray that requires a SIM tool to remove. So going back and forth between my cameras and this laptop is actually a bit of a chore. So it's interesting that Samsung kind of had the creators in mind with Thunderbolt ports and this SD card slot, but then the actual ergonomics and overall experience of it don't really hit that high mark for me to be able to recommend this for true creators. Now the screen might not be super high resolution, but then again it is a 13-inch display. It's still an enjoyable experience from a textual standpoint, but for pure enjoyment like things like Netflix and YouTube, it actually helps that this is a 1080p display because it helps with the battery life, of which there's actually a large 69.7 watt-hour unit in here, which is again so impressive for a laptop that's this slim. The screen is bright enough to enjoy out on my front porch, which means it'll be fine for all the cafes that you'll get to enjoy after all of this craziness is over. But I also wanted to chime in real quick. I did the more traditional review for this laptop over at Pocket Now, and no one mentioned that my wallpaper is a fan art of a pivotal moment in a show called Crash Landing on You. Yes, I'm in that K-drama whole thing, and it's pretty hilarious that Samsung shows up so much in all of these shows. It makes sense, but at the same time, I keep pointing out what kinds of devices people are using. But yeah, this screen has been great for watching stuff like that, things like Community like you see in this video, and of course, like I just said, Crash Landing on You. Because sometimes you get a convertible not for how powerful the engine is or because of its many features and capabilities, you get it just because it's fun to drive. And the Book Flex is a fun laptop for everyday scenarios. You can tent it up for some on-table watching or fold it back for some in-bed viewing. The screen is easy on the eyes and you can connect wireless or wired headphones thanks to a headphone jack on the left side. You can go into the lighter power modes and it might go the whole season. I mean, K-dramas are pretty long. Alright, so for all the thought that Samsung put into this laptop, they've created a pretty luxurious, ultra-portable notebook. But it does go for $1,349 at the base model. That base model gets you 8GB of RAM and 512GB of onboard storage. So for the business-oriented, perhaps the enterprise-forward user, that might all translate to one of the best options for a slim and nimble mobile lifestyle. But then again, if you're just responding to emails, browsing, and writing up contracts or scripts, you might notice that there are many of other options available that could undercut this price point. You have to know what bells and whistles you'll actually use. And I imagine for most general users, it'll be like buying a convertible. Some of the fun doesn't get used that often, but you still look and feel great knowing it's there and it's yours. And so there you have it. The question, who is the Samsung Galaxy Book Flex for? This is such a beautiful laptop, and I'm actually so happy that I was able to test this thing out over the last week or so. It's been a lovely way to start the morning, just journaling on the laptop like this. It's easy to just get away from this home office of mine, even if it's just to the kitchen right over there, and I'm able to just sit down with a cup of coffee and be somewhere else for a change, and still be able to get everything done. If anything, I think that's what the Galaxy Book Flex was made for. It's made for an era that will hopefully come sooner rather than later, when we're able to just get back to traveling and being on the go. And this laptop is able to handle a majority of those various scenarios. In any case, I'm going to go ahead and call it on this one. Thank you so much for watching. If you're new here, consider subscribing to my channel so you can keep up with everything that I'm doing. And yeah, drop some likes on these videos and get into the discussion in the comments down below. Tell me what you think about the new laptops by Samsung, the Samsung Galaxy Book line, with the Book Flex being at the premium tier. From there, I'm going to go ahead and call it on this one. Thank you so much for watching. And I actually have to reach over here and just remind you to enjoy your tea, everybody.